Hey YouTube, it's Zoe or Read by Zoe, and today I'm going to share with you all the books that have made me cry. Now, I am a book crier. I cry in basically every single book that I read. Even if it's just a little tear, it might even be a happy tear, but I will cry. But the books that I'm going to share with you all today are books that really just made me sob. Let's begin. Book number 1 is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I didn't really like this book. I gave it like 3 or 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was okay. I didn't really care for the overall story, but the end, you learn some pretty shocking things. I was not ready for it at all, and it just hit me, and I was just left there confused, weeping. Book number 2 is New Moon by Stephenie Meyer, the second book in the Twilight saga. When I read this, it was like 2009, like the time that Twilight reigned, and I was in middle school, and I was obsessed with Twilight. I had like 4 different Twilight posters all over my room. I had an Edward shirt and an Edward doll. I listened to the soundtrack to the movie every single day. So you could say I was pretty into the Twilight thing. So when I read this, and you know what happens at the beginning of this book, I felt betrayed. I felt like everything was shattering. My whole life was falling apart. When we got to this part, that's like October, November, December, that part, those pages are warped because of all the tears that fell from my face. That was also before the time I had my own laptop and I had unlimited texting, so I couldn't just text my friends and be like, hey, what's happening? I need to know. I couldn't just go onto my computer and look up what was happening or talk to other people who were going through the same thing that I did. So I was just left all alone in my Edwardless cave of sadness. The next book is If I Stay by Gayle Forman. I love Gayle Forman's writing. This book is about a girl named Mia, and she is in a car crash with all of her family, and all of her family members except her die. And she's in a coma. She has to decide whether she wants to live and be an orphan without any siblings, or if she wants to die and be with them. So this whole plot is just sad. I think I cried throughout this entire book, and when you're reading this, you're imagining that you're in her shoes and what you would do if you were put in this position, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle this position. I was just desperate throughout this entire book to figure out what was going to happen. Book number 4 is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I cried more in this book than in any of the other Hunger Games books, which doesn't make a lot of sense because this is really sad, but the other books just get sadder and sadder. I read this whole book in one night. I just picked this book up from Costco and I was like, oh, I don't know anything about it, I'll just read it. And once I started it, I could not put it down. I brought it to dinner. We went out to dinner that night and I just read through the entire thing. I was so incredibly rude. When I came home, I just kept on reading it, and then I decided to take a bath because I love reading in the bath. And then someone dies. You probably already know, but someone who's a friend dies, and that hit me. I was in the bathtub, and obviously it's really echoey in there because it's a bathroom. There's tile everywhere, and so I let out one sob. I was like, ugh. And everyone else was asleep because it was around 11 o'clock at night. I was the only one awake, and I was in a very echoey bathtub, and I had to submerge myself in the water to keep quiet. I was crying underwater. I couldn't handle it anymore. There was just snot everywhere. The emotions that were just coursing through my veins, I couldn't handle it. Luckily, no one woke up and had to check on me and be like, are you dying? We're okay. The next book that's on my list is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. There's a lot of death in this book. We didn't dwell on any of the deaths. It was just like bam, 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 bam. And I was just taken by surprise. I was like, no, stop it. Stop. What are you doing, J.K. Rowling? No. It was also the summer after 5th grade, so I was like 11 or 12 and, you know, hadn't really thought about death up until this point. So I was just crying about humanity and my existence on the face of the planet and that I would eventually die. Number 6 is Second Chance Summer by Morgan Matson. This book is about a teenage girl named Taylor Edwards, and her family isn't very close. She's closest with her father though, and her father gets told by a doctor that he is going to die in a couple of months. So they go for one last summer to their old lake house. Her father was dying throughout this entire book. It's not a spoiler because, you know, you learn it in like the first chapter, and it's also on the back of the book. He just deteriorates through the entire book, and I am very close with my father, so this was not a pleasant read. This was an ugly cry book too, so I wasn't composed and it was just like a single tear coursing down my face. No. The next book is not a surprise because I talk about it all the time when I am talking about cry-worthy books, and this is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This is definitely the saddest of all of her books and also my favorite because you really care about every single character who is in this book. And it's not just like the ending is sad, but the ending, the epilogue, is the saddest thing that I have ever read. But there are several points in this book that make you just shut down. Like your whole body just shuts down. You have to lay down, take a few minutes, and then maybe you can pick up the book again. I read the entire Infernal Devices trilogy in like 4 days. I was so invested in all of their lives because I had spent all of spring break with these characters. I stayed up until like 3 a.m. reading this book, and I had used an entire box of Kleenex. I was just at that point, I didn't care because there were just so much tears and snot on my face that I was just using my sweatshirt sleeve at the end of it because who cared? After I finished the last page of this book, I honestly had a breakdown. I was, again, just thinking about life. That's when it gets to the worst point in reading a book, when you start to think about what it would be like if this was you, or, you know, you just start thinking about life and how it's fleeting, and you have a little existential crisis. That was after reading this book, and when I woke up, my eyes were swollen shut because I had cried so much. The last book is Allegiant by Veronica Roth. I read it the day it came out, so I wasn't spoiled at all. I had no idea what to expect in this book, but when I got to the part, I could not believe what I was reading. I thought maybe it was a typo because it was a first edition. I'm like, oh, maybe they mixed that up. Maybe it was supposed to be, maybe no. I was in such a state of denial, but I eventually reread the chapter and I was furious. These were angry tears. Angry and also very, very sad. I threw this book across the room. Not kidding. I actually threw it across the room and I just started sobbing. It was like, again, midnight, very late at night when I am very vulnerable, and I also have to try and be very quiet because everyone else goes to sleep at a reasonable hour except myself. So I got my pillow and I just sobbed into it. I also didn't take my makeup off at that point, so there were mascara stains all down my face and all on my pillow, but I did not care because this book destroyed me. So those were the books that made me cry the most. I'm sorry I got so sassy in there. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave down below the books that made you cry the most. I will talk to you later. Hope you have a great day. Bye!